Hey everyone. Now, as is long-standing tradition here at Andrew Hilton, our last tasting before Christmas is always a champagne or sparkling wine tasting. And, well, usually we have some Christmas dinner-style wines open right before Christmas too. So, being as we don't really have the opportunity to open wines in the store, let alone do my famous mulled wine out in the tasting floor, we're just going to blend the two tastings together. And that's coming up on Friday, December 17th, our last tasting before the holidays and our last tasting of 2021. For this, we have it in two parts. Let's start with the sparkling side here. These are kind of our picks for a wonderful New Year's Eve, or just, a wonderful time in general. Sparkling wine did not, in fact, get its start in the Champagne region of France. It actually got about a 60-year head start a little further south down in the region of Limoux. Now, the famous wine from the region is Blanquette de Limoux, but Blanquette's kind of like the Prosecco of France, and it's not that interesting. So we're going to do the Cuvee Maison Cremant de Limoux, blend of Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Chenin Blanc. Very French, very stylish, very fun. And then I wanted to take it a little bit weird. This is a new discovery for us. This is a dry Lambrusco from Italy. You may remember your grandparents drinking Lambrusco, and it was about, $9, $10 a bottle. Well, things have come on a little bit, or rather, they've gotten back to how they used to be. We've got a wonderful dry sparkling red from Italy here. I think this is going to show very, very well. On to the Christmas dinner wines. We'll get to this one in a second. I think that Chardonnay, especially Burgundian Chardonnay, is a fantastic pairing with Christmas dinner, but, well, everybody kind of knows that already. So we're going with the other Burgundian white grape in Aligote. This one's by Clare Naudin. Aligote has really been shooting up. It was always just a quiet blending grape that nobody ever talked about, but now it's absolutely red hot internationally, and I did want to show it off because this is a fantastic Chardonnay alternative, especially considering how much less money this is than a Burgundian Chard. And then finally, from Foradori, Elizabetha Foradori from the Dolomite Mountains. She makes fantastic Taroldegos, but they lost their whole Taroldego crop, or about 85% of it, to frost and then to hail. So they made Lezèr, which is kind of a red, kind of a rosé, straddles it a little bit, but definitely I opened this when it first arrived a couple weeks ago, and we were like, yep, that's our turkey wine. That's our Christmas dinner red wine right there. We're done. Has notes of cranberries to it. It's really, really fun. The suggested retail on these wines is about $109.39. We're selling it for $90. So we think this is going to be a really fun lineup. I hope we'll see you out on Friday, December 13th. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Friday night wine tasting, our last one of 2021. We are, of course, going to take the Christmas break here. So for the first time, I have nothing on the table, nothing behind me for things to talk about upcoming events. So you are safe from my shameless profiteering tonight. We're going to talk about Christmas and New Year's wines. These are very much a two-part tasting tonight. So let's start with our Christmas tasting here. So for our first pairing, we're going to have the Clare Naudin Bregonna Alagote and the Foradori Lezèr, which is a Taroldego from Terre Dolomiti. For the New Year's wines, we're going to start with the Cuvee Maison, which I am probably going to have the very tiniest sip of this because I've been allergic to almost everything sparkling lately, but I do know I'm not allergic to the Baldini, so I can have some of that. So let's get a little bit of the Clare Naudin in our glasses, and we'll talk a little bit about Bregonna Alagote. Now, Aligote is, apart from the promo where I talked about it 30 seconds ago, perhaps something you're hearing about for the very first time right now. It does have the same parentage as Chardonnay. It's a crossing of Gouais Blanc with Pinot, and it's been around for about as long as Chardonnay. But Chardonnay, it's kind of the special snowflake of Burgundy. Starting in the 1920s, it was kind of, okay, let's back this up a little bit. Bregonna Alagote and Bourgogne Chardonnay started out being roughly equals, and this would be pre-phylloxera, so pre-1868. So these two grapes grew up in Burgundy. Aligote was known that it really liked sunshiny places, hot places, warm places, but if you planted it somewhere that was colder, somewhere where it got conditions that weren't favorable for the pickier Chardonnay, you could plant Aligote there and it would still grow very well. They were children of the same crossings. They are what we call true siblings in the sense that they both have both parents in common, as opposed to something like Dereza, which is one of the parents of Taroldego, which has one grape in common with another parent grape as Syrah. But Aligote because it could grow in the colder places of Burgundy, it could grow on the sides or the back sides of a hill rather than having that direct southern facing, it kind of got relegated to those places because if it will grow there, why not grow it there? And you can give all the good sites over to Chardonnay. And that became something of a self-fulfilling prophecy where Chardonnay became the darling of Burgundy not because it was a better grape necessarily, although I do think Chardonnay has some advantages over Aligote, and we'll go over that later. Because it had to be given the most favorable sites in the region. Because of that, it became associated with the best sites in Burgundy and with the best wines of Burgundy. Now, even within a very famous vineyard, say Puligny-Montrachet or Crozon-Charlemagne, which are wines that are comfortably above the $100 a bottle price point, if not a good deal more in the case of Crozon-Charlemagne, while you might expect those wines to be 100% Chardonnay, even within a vineyard the size of Crozon-Charlemagne, which is quite small, there are still little pockets that are maybe a little too cold, or maybe don't have perfect soil types, or maybe you're right next to a fence. And even then, there has been Aligote always there quietly in the back of the blend, but that is ending. Bregonna Alagote, I believe as of 2024, will no longer be allowed in wines like Puligny or Chassagne-Montrachet, wines like Crozon-Charlemagne, wines like Rosso, can no longer contain Aligote, which is ironic because the only time in its history that Aligote has ever achieved any real fame and any real buzz in the market happens to be right now. People are really all about their Aligote. So let's taste this and talk about why. Now, you will be unsurprised to learn that with it having the exact same parentage as Chardonnay, as having grown up alongside Chardonnay in Burgundy, the spiritual home of Chardonnay, this is going to kind of remind you of a Chardonnay, and that is absolutely by design. In the nose, we get creamy apples. I get some nice sweet vanilla. I get some real sour cream cheese yogurt notes off of this. I get peach, I get apricot, I get something in that pineapple family. I'll say tropical fruit because I don't think it's distinctly pineapple, but if you wanted to say this was mango, you wanted to say this was something else like that, go for it. And when I say all of those flavors, I'm kind of ticking off a checklist of things that really top flight Burgundian Chardonnay can taste like. But I will point out that if this was a Burgundian Chardonnay and it tasted this good, the price point would be more like $50, not $24. Bregonna Alagote, the reason it's so hot right now is there's a whole new generation of wine drinkers who are in their mid to late 20s to early 30s. I'm actually a little bit older than this new generation of wine drinkers, that they're really all about these amazing wines, but they can't afford a $50 Chardonnay on a weekly basis. That's madness. So what are they drinking instead? Well, that's kind of what's driving Aligote. Is it's literally a full sibling of Chardonnay. It's grown in all of these amazing sites in Burgundy. And apart from the region of Bourgogne, which we'll talk about in a minute here, which will bring us to our only map of the evening, not because I don't love maps, just because I can't get a map of this, and a map of this doesn't really help you, and this is grown throughout Italy. This is really something that's always kind of slipped through the cracks, or we'd put in extra Aligote when it was a cold year, because in a cold year Aligote would fully ripen but Chardonnay wouldn't. It was always the backup. It was the Cabernet Franc of Burgundian whites, if you will, as opposed to Cabernet Sauvignon that captured all the limelight. But in a cold year, when your Cabernet Sauvignon, or your Chardonnay in this case, didn't ripen, you needed your Aligote or Cabernet Franc to actually make a wine. And sometimes you made incredible wines, but because they were Aligote, some people would turn their noses up at them. So this is a great variety that, in a way, if you've been drinking Burgundy, or Burgundian white anyway, for the last 20 years, you're very familiar with this grape, but you're only hearing about it tonight, and I think that's really fun. What has been done with the grape in the past to keep it hidden? It's because it never appeared on the front label. So if you bought Bourgogne Blanc, now, if you'd come in and said, hey, Kyle, what's the grape variety in Burgundian white? I'd just say Chardonnay. You know, if you're some random person off the street and I've never seen you before, like, oh, well, I like Burgundian white. What goes into it? I could go into the long history and say, well, it's always Chardonnay unless it's from these regions, in which case it's Sauvignon Blanc, like St. Brie. In fact, it's the only one. But there's places like Bourgogne where they make Aligote. There's a very long, complicated answer to that question. But the simple answer, if you're just coming in and it's a Monday afternoon and I'm on my third coffee, is made with Chardonnay. Because that's 99% true. And the thing is Aligote's always kind of lurked around in the background. It's never been the predominant grape. It would be blended in 3, 4, 8% into a blend, more in a cold year, less in a hot year. But it would always quietly be there. Aligote is actually found, because it has a little more acidity than Chardonnay, because it likes colder years. It's actually been really heavily dominant in Cremant de Bourgogne, or sparkling or champagne-style sparkling wines from the region of Burgundy, which, when you consider that Chardonnay is one of the, if not the most important grape in Champagne, and Chardonnay is kind of the major grape in Burgundy, shouldn't Cremant de Bourgogne be, you know, Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, which is also grown in both Champagne and Burgundy? But no, actually, Aligote has really been populating the Cremant de Bourgogne lately. So it's always been there. It's always been hiding kind of in the background. You know, the legal designation of, well, of course Burgundy's Chardonnay. Ignore that law where we're allowed to put in up to 15% Aligote. Nobody plants Aligote anymore. It's hidden because you don't buy French wine by the grape variety, you buy it by the region. And if you're buying Puligny Montrachet, or you're buying Corton Charlemagne, or you're buying Meursault, or Puy Fouissé, or Macon-Sous-Lutré, or any of the other 1,000 Burgundian different vineyards, you're all just assuming it's Chardonnay. Aligote is hidden in there because it was allowed in the blend in small percentages, but it never had to be stated on the label what the grape varieties were, so they could blend in Aligote when they needed to. Now, as I alluded to early on, in 2024, that's going to end. Bregonna Alagote, labeled like this, is going to be its own thing, and at least the famous vineyards. I don't know if it's going to be true of Bourgogne Blanc, but I believe if you're actually naming it for a vineyard or a village, it is going to have to be 100% Chardonnay. Which is kind of interesting because Aligote's kind of always been there, and it's made those wines substantially better in cold years. I never want to be a conspiracy theorist because, you know, QAnon ruined conspiracy theories forever. They made them completely unfun. But I kind of think that this might be a climate change thing where the winters aren't as cold and they're never as cold as they used to be, and maybe Aligote has kind of served its purpose, and now that it's always warmer, they don't have to use it in the blend anymore, so now it's being cut out. But yeah, as a wine that was quietly always blended into other Burgundian whites, Aligote is coming to a close, and now it has to stand on its own. Oh, and we now have the live transcripts. Yes, that's true. I do like that I have that. I've never been closed captioned before.
For the ease of access.
What happens to this grape in a hot year? Well, that's really interesting. So, Aaron, if you'd bring up our one and only map of the evening.
Sure.
Thank you, sir.
There it is.
Awesome. So what you should be looking at right now is a map of Burgundy and the southern region, which is the Mâconnais. At the northern tip of it, there is a region called Bourgogne. This, in an entire region of Burgundy where either Aligote wasn't planted because it was a Pinot Noir vineyard, or where it was planted in very small quantities because it was a Chardonnay vineyard. For whatever reason, Aligote never really caught on in Chablis, so it's not really planted there, despite it being the coldest of the regions. But in Bourgogne, it was really treated right through from phylloxera to modern day as being a major grape variety. In fact, the predominant white grape variety in Bourgogne, and Bourgogne being in the southern part of Burgundy is quite warm. There you get what's called Aligote d'Or, or golden Aligote. Aligote actually really likes the heat. It drops this steely, clean acidity, and it starts becoming more opulent. It starts to taste more like a classic Chardonnay in the sense that it will throw that coconut, it will throw that tropical fruit, it will throw those kind of interesting perfumey notes and that big gun smoke hit that you get that's almost like struck match. It has all of those things in a hot place, but really the only place in Burgundy for the last 90 years since Bourgogne started being replanted at the start of the 20th century. It's the only place that's really done it in hot sites. So we know what Bouzeron tastes like, but Aligote really was never planted. There aren't examples that I've ever seen of Australian or South American or American or, you know, New Zealand Aligote. They don't exist. It's just here, and there's one little tiny region in Burgundy that I've never seen sold in Alberta ever, and never had, that has this characteristic. I'm reading from tasting notes I found online. Bouzeron's like its own thing. Never seen it here. And yes, tragically, our only map. So why are we tasting this tonight? Why is this part of our Christmas tasting? Well, ham and turkey are very, very different foods. Ham has this, you know, usually this sweet glaze. It has this huge salty hit. It has a high degree of fat. It can do red. It loves rosé. It loves big, sweet, high acidity Riesling, and so do I. But turkey, it's so lean, and it's so soft, and it's so earthy, and it doesn't have a lot of fat, and it has such delicate characteristics, and you're pairing it with things like sage, and it's so different. To be able to say, well, this is a white wine for Christmas, you know, that's usually a lie, because, you know, a wine that goes with ham will do okay with turkey, and vice versa is the same. Wine that goes well with turkey doesn't always go well with ham. This wine, for whatever reason, it has all those classical, this would do really well with sage. Like, you go looking for sage in this wine, it's there. You get all these classical turkey characteristics out of it, but then I spin it in the glass and I take a sip, and I imagine a ham with all that saltiness. I think, yeah, this is so much like bright upfront acidity. This would be fine with ham. And there's so few wines that can do both. And that's why this is on our Christmas table, is this Clare Naudin. For any of you who bought our 12 Days of Christmas pack, which I mislabeled as the 12 Nights of Christmas, but we're going to move past that, this was in there because it's exactly what you want for that. Oh yeah, and the sage is right there if you go looking for it. It's beautiful. Okay. On to wine number 2. This is by Elizabetha Foradori. Now, this is from Terre Dolomiti, which is up in that giant mixing bag of wine regions that is kind of the northeastern corner of Italy. You have everything from Sauvignon Blanc from the Collio Hills, which are these series of foothills, or of Alp foothills, right on the Italian-Slovenian border. You have all of Valpolicella Amarone in here. You have all of the Pinot Grigios of Alto Adige, and just the general Pinot Grigio della Venezia in here, including the entire Ramato tradition. Soave is in here. Prosecco is in here. There's a whole Dolomite, super Tuscan sort of thing going on where they make Bordeaux-style reds, led by Tenuta San Leonardo. And then you have Teroldego, which is a fascinating grape. So let's pour a little of this in a glass, and let's talk about Elizabetha Foradori, and let's talk about Teroldego as a grape. Teroldego is a very old grape variety. It is one of the siblings of one of the parent grapes of Syrah. So it is distantly related. It's kind of like a great uncle of Syrah, or great aunt of Syrah. Now, Elizabetha Foradori comes in 1985. Her family's owned this winery for going on 100 years, and her father very suddenly dies. So let's talk about what Teroldego would have looked like in about 1985. This was when Italian wine was very much seen as you're either famous or you're not. Chianti was famous. Barolo was famous. Basically nothing else was actually doing well. Amarone, I suppose, was doing well. But the rest of Italy was treated as, well, you've got your own local traditions, but why don't you just go ahead and plant some Merlot and Chardonnay and just shut up and make some wine, and you'll make some money. It won't be a lot of money, but why don't you leave that for the famous regions? And Teroldego was very much this way. Teroldego was generally made as a fairly pale, fairly rustic, easy drinking, not very serious grape variety that was planted generally bush trained because they didn't have the money for wire training. And it was kind of a local curiosity that maybe the tourists would buy if they happened to come through town. Elizabetha Foradori, she basically came in and said, well, no, Teroldego can be a lot more. And she'd gotten an incredible winemaking education, and she started making these very dark, very serious, very intense Teroldegos. And she actually transformed the region, and the whole, like, Teroldego now is literally synonymous with Elizabetha Foradori. I've carried 4 different Teroldegos through the store, including this one. All of them have been by Foradori. She is this grape variety. She's one of kind of the triumvirate of incredible women winemakers from Italy, along with Arianna Occhipinti and Valentina Pasquela. She's just an absolute icon, and she literally defined this grape variety for the world. So, ironically, in 2017, a hailstorm came through and wiped out 70% of their crop. Now, she was experimenting with a lot of different things with making wine. She made about 9 different expressions of Teroldego. She made it from concrete. She made it from stainless steel. She made it from new oak. She made it from used oak. She made it aged in amphorae buried in the ground. So, when she lost 70% of her crop, she said, okay, we're going to make one wine. We're going to make it using all of those methods and blend it together, but we're also going to make it kind of like how Teroldego was before I came on the scene in 1985. And it was such a huge hit, they continued making it right through 2020. So this is Lezèr. This is kind of a throwback to the Teroldegos that Elizabetha Foradori walked into in 1985, but with 35 years of experience, and her coming back to this style and saying, okay, this is what I've learned, literally redefining the entire region and the grape variety. Let's see if we can actually make like a pale rustic style Teroldego, but make it my way. And I think this rules. The very first time I tasted this, I said, oh God, this is like cranberry sauce. This needs to be a Christmas wine. This is amazing. Is it a rosé? Is it a red? It kind of doesn't matter which side of that conversation you come down on. I chilled 3 out of the 4. I didn't chill this. This would happily take a chill and drink like a rosé. It's also completely fine at room temperature as a red. It honestly doesn't matter. I love this on its own. This would be spectacular with turkey. This in ham would be all right. I think it's a better turkey wine. But just the aromas, the candied fruit, like Maynard's wine gums in the nose for me, which don't actually taste anything like wine, but I'm getting these like real fruit gummies, this like candied fruit in the nose, but it's so rich, and it's raspberries and it's cherries and it's blackberries. You get it in the mouth and the acidity is right there, and it hits you more like a rosé. But it's not flat and flabby like a warm rosé can be. There's enough body here, there's enough richness here that it actually carries it off. And it sits right on that line of, is it a red, is it a rosé? And I love that, because I always find like if I do a red with turkey, it's a little too heavy. If I do a rosé with turkey, I'm kind of missing the red. This just splits the difference, and it's fantastic for this. So it's a bit of a throwback. It's also an incredibly today wine in the sense that, natural wines and wines that, sit on the line between red and rosé is very 2021. But I love how much of a throwback this is to her past, and how much of the Teroldego, if Elizabetha Foradori didn't exist, wouldn't be something we're still talking about today. It would have gone extinct, or just be, 2 fields of forgotten grapes in this part of the world. This region, this grape variety, is a conversation. It's a page in your, wine textbook because of this one incredible woman. And this is like our Christmas wine from her, and I absolutely love it. I hope you do too. That one just owns. When the cameras go off and we're packing up, that's the one I'm going back to. There's a very good chance I'm going to be allergic to this, so do forgive me if I pour myself very, very, very little of this, because I just need enough to taste on this one. I have gradually over the years developed an allergy to traditional method or champagne method sparkling wines. It's nothing against this. It's unlikely any of you are allergic to it. It's a developed allergy. Unless you've drank as much champagne and sparkling wine as I have, which is very unlikely, you're not going to have any reaction to this, but I very likely will. So, the region of Limoux. 1531, about 150 years before the Champagne folks started making sparkling wine, Limoux got into the sparkling wine business. Now, wine had always been a little bit sparkling if you made a mistake in the wine cellaring step. If you didn't completely finish fermenting the wine, it would start fermenting again in the spring and the wines would become very carbonated and very explosive. Limoux was really the first wine region in the world that actually started doing it on purpose. Now, Limoux traditionally would use the Mozak grape variety, and Mozak's wonderful. We do have this wine in a blanquette made with Mozak. Hello, Mark. Would you like some wine?
Yeah.
Yeah? All right. Let's start you here.
Okay.
Mozak has this wonderful rustic apple cider sort of thing. Like, if you've ever had French apple cider from Normandy and you get that apple skin, rustic farmhouse, slightly mushroomy character from it, Mozak very much has that style to it, but it's made from grapes. This is not made with Mozak. This is made predominantly with Chardonnay, Chenin Blanc, and Pinot Noir. The wine is very much an homage to Champagne, as most Cremants are. I'll pause for a moment just to talk about Cremant. You'll see Cremant de Bordeaux, Cremant de Rhône, Cremant d'Alsace, Cremant de Loire. Any major French wine region makes a Cremant. And what a Cremant is basically a sparkling wine made to the same rules as at least base level Champagne, which means 15 months aging on its lees, re-fermentation in bottle, all the stuff you get with standard Champagne, but not made in Champagne at about anywhere from a third to half the price of a Champagne. Limoux, I think, is the most interesting of them because they've literally been making sparkling wine longer than the folks in Champagne. I think there's a reason that Domaine Rosier would carry it in a Cremant white, a Cremant rosé, and a true blanquette that uses Mozak. This is a wine region that just, to me, is synonymous with great, like $20-ish sparkling wine, and this is our best seller from this range. Devin just killing the questions tonight. Thank you very much, Devin. Now, to me, this is very steely. It's very clean. I get green apple. I get a little bit of smoke. And that smoke is definitely coming from the Chardonnay. There's a little tiny touch of soap to this. There's definitely lemon here. There's pear. There's a bit of tropical fruit. I'll say white peach into banana a little tiny bit, but all of that stuff is coming from the lees aging. There's some rich kind of bready, yeasty, brioche characteristics here. And I'm not itching yet, so I might actually be able to have a glass of this, which would be nice. You laugh, but it's hell when I react to these stupid things. So yeah, bright, rich, classic, elegant. This is a wine region that does make some still wines. We've had some still Mozak from them, which was very interesting. We still have a still Chenin Blanc from Limoux on the shelves. But it's not a wine region that really enters the consciousness. This is one of those wines of southwest France, as like the wine manuals call them. And it kind of gets lumped in with... oh God, now I'm put on the spot. Yeah, not coming to top of mind. Sorry about that. There are other wines in this region that are like very minor little regions. Mataran is one that they're kind of like all glossed over as being, you know, that's kind of the wild west of France. It's not a region we really talk about a lot because they're all so very different from each other. You know, there's Bordeaux and the Loire and Champagne. Why don't you drink one of those? Don't talk about what's down here. It's all weird stuff that we don't really know that much about. Limoux is very much in that vein for the French, despite it being the home of literally all sparkling wine to a certain point. So I love this. I think that if you took this to a tasting at someone's home and everybody had them wrapped in like paper sacks, so nobody could tell what was what, and they put this on the same table as some consumer champagnes, I'm going to very much, single out Veuve Clicquot here because I don't think Veuve Clicquot Yellow Label actually tastes any different from Prosecco. If you put this on the same table as a Veuve Clicquot or a entry-level Moët and Chandon or an entry-level, say, Piper Heidsieck maybe, I don't think that this would show any better or worse than any of those other wines, and all of those wines would cost you between $50 and $70, and this would still be on the shelf at $21. I like good Cremant. There's a lot of bad Cremant out there. Don't get me wrong. There's bad Cremant on the market. I love Cremant when it's done well because it's so interesting, so complex, so rich, and it doesn't cost you an arm and a leg. There's no magic to making wine in the same way the Champenois do. You take a wine, you ferment it to being a finished still white wine. You add a little bit of sugar. You put it down in your cellar. You age it for a while. You add a little bit of sugar. You add a little bit of fresh yeast. You age it back again so that it actually recarbonates. You blow that bit of yeast out. You top it up with a little bit of liquid, and then you let it carbonate again. It's not complicated. You can do it anywhere. But if you do it other places in France and you do it very, very well, you really can mimic Champagne very closely. So I think this is fun just as being a $20 Tuesday night pizza wine Champagne surrogate. Now, I will say, really top class champagne, like the Piper Heidsieck Rare that we had on the shelves for like 8 years and nobody bought. So Devin and I split the last bottle and just bought it and opened it. It was absolutely life-changing. That's not an experience you're ever going to get from a Cremant. I don't care who you're buying your Cremant from. But against everyday champagne, I think Cremant's just as good in most cases. Oh yeah, savory crepes in this? Heck yes. Actually, just savory crepes in everything. Savory crepes and like a big shot of whiskey would be great. Just savory crepes, yes. But this would be lovely. I will say I think that good sparkling wine does... Nope, I just got the itching. I am allergic to it. Yep, just got the itch. I'm allergic to it.
Nice.
Can't have any more of that.
I was wondering when it was going to happen.
Yeah, it was going to. Well, actually, I can tell the swelling is set in my ear canals because the pitch in my right ear just went super buzzy and weird. So now everything sounds like I'm talking through a kazoo in this ear.
Cool.
It's great.
That's a superpower.
Yeah. Yes, it's my terrible, terrible superpower that if I drink champagne, everything sounds like a kazoo. All right. This I know I'm not allergic to, though. This is the Baldini. This is Lambrusco. Now, no maps required for Lambrusco because unlike most wines, there is in fact no region really for Lambrusco. Yes, most of it comes from Emiliana, but they kind of can make it anywhere. There is Lambrusco made down in Campania. There's Lambrusco made in Veneto. There is Lambrusco made in Piemonte, right next to like Barolo and Barbaresco. This is a wine that kind of it needs someone to step in and say, hey everybody, this isn't terrible anymore. Mark, would you do me a solid? Over in our miscellaneous wine section, next to like the Roscato, there's like some cheap Lambrusco. It'll either say like Castelvetro or something like that. You want to grab me one of those? This is called I didn't get my props earlier. I mean, I always want pizza, but this is the pizza wine on the table. This is... Yep, that's the one. And that one right there. So welcome to the 1970s, everybody. Lambrusco was, for many North Americans, their introduction to red wine. So red wine was a scary thing. It was a new thing to a lot of people. Now, the 1970s being 50 years ago, I can't imagine. It was before I was born, but red wine was terrifying to a lot of people. It seemed so sour and bitter and challenging. But Lambrusco was sparkling like Coca-Cola. It kind of had a cola-ish note to it. It was something you could buy very cheaply, and it was cold, and it was sweet, and it was easy, and everybody liked it. It was also kind of crap, to be perfectly honest. Like, these are fine. Actually, fine. Let's actually do a side by side. I'm very curious to see how this actually goes. No, I am.
Nice.
I haven't had a sweet Lambrusco in probably 10 years. So I'm curious to see how this. Oh wow, it does not fizz the same at all. This fizzes like Diet Coke. That actually fizzed like champagne. That was weird, quite frankly. And it smells like pencil erasers more than anything else. Pencil erasers and Kool-Aid. Yep. And the fruit characteristic, rather than being fun, is kind of like ketchup from a metal packet you got, like a Burger King metal ketchup packet that you kind of forgot about and left in your glove box for 2 years, so it got like really, really heat cooked and ended up all ruined. That's basically the dominant fruit note in that. So you can broadly understand how Lambrusco kind of got a bad name out there. This is not that. Lambrusco is a very old winemaking style. Actually, in 106 BC, the world's very, very first agricultural manual for how to make everything from tomatoes to olive oil to wine was produced. And they actually talk about making Lambrusco in that. So it wasn't always like this. It wasn't always, glove box hot ketchup packet. It used to be something really interesting. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight, is the wine in your glasses. This is by Baldini. This is made organically. It's made very dry. Like, it smells so charming. You don't have that in front of you, you lucky, lucky souls. This smells apples and oranges away. I would not... If I didn't know they were from the same, in theory, wine style, I wouldn't associate with them each other. I do know that this is not made Cremant. This is actually made with the champagne method. The wine is actually re-fermented in bottle, whereas I will absolutely guarantee that that's tank fermented. Just the fact that it looks almost flat now in the glass, it has no carbonation left, that is definitely re-fermented in tank. And this smells so pretty. I get blackberries, I get blueberries, I get a little bit of graphite, but not over much. There's smoke here. There's tea-like notes, especially black tea notes, actually. Oh, the black tea. Like blueberry tea. That's all kinds of fun. And I know I kind of introduced this as being more like a pizza wine, but for me, where I drink this style of wine is with, shamelessly North American style Chinese food, like with your ginger beef and your fried rice and everything, your typical, it's New Year's Eve, I'm not cooking sort of thing. This and that are absolute magic together. I love good Lambrusco with that. I am shocked how much I hate this. Like, I didn't think I'd hate that much, but oh my God, that's bad.
Just the context of the evening, maybe.
No, it's not the context of the evening. This sucks.
It's just terrible.
It's just, no, Aaron, please. You're doubting. Please, have a glass. No, right now. You doubted me.
I'd have to get a glass and all.
No, you could just down that one. Come on, Aaron. No. Let's see what Aaron thinks in real time.
You sell this?
Yes, I do. And it actually sells not bad.
Yeah.
But please, Aaron, do let me know. Because we all have, if you have a car that's more than 3 years old, you have one ketchup packet in your glove box. That's just the law.
Oh, God.
Do you get the ketchup? Do you get the metal?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's wretched.
Yeah, it's awful.
I wouldn't do anything with it. I wouldn't even make mulled wine out of it.
Yeah.
It's too bad.
It's already well on its way to sangria, but why would you?
Why would you ruin your sangria by putting that in it? Yes. Yeah. I'm never going to touch that again. Go right ahead. And I will point out, did you get that, Sky?
This camera did.
Here, actually, let me just show this off here. I'll dump this.
Here.
I just want to show the difference here in carbonation. So we're going to do the real Lambrusco against the one made very commercially. And just look at the difference in carbonation here. And look at how long the persistent bubbles stay. So that's the real one. And here's the commercial style. And I think I'm actually giving that more of an aggressive pour. Now I poured this second and this first, and you can see the way the bubbles are just pulling away, whereas the bubbles here are persistent. And yes, it is now pulling away a little bit, but you look at the difference in carbonation here, and it's just apples and oranges. They're completely different things. Even the color's different. This has got purples and blues, whereas this is much more brick red. They're still made with broadly the same grape varieties and grape blend, but it's not the same thing at all. But this is why Lambrusco is one of those things to where, you know, back in 1985 when Elizabetha Foradori was trying to take Teroldego back, we're right now in this period where at some point we kind of have to say, you know what, Riuniti, we love you. Well, we hate you, but we love you. But this nonsense, this Boon Sangria but worse, it can't be called Lambrusco anymore. It has to be its own thing so that real Lambrusco can kind of stand on its own 2 feet. This was a real eye-opener for me, more than I thought. I am by no means going to recommend anyone come in and buy one of these to do the side-by-side. Please don't. You would hate yourself so much. But this is absolutely remarkable to have them side-by-side. You may absolutely pour that out. But I would like you and Ethan to try this, just for laughs.
Not right now.
Not right now. And
Another time.
you know, we'll lock up the shop and leave, and we still won't have tasted it. Yes. But yeah, Lambrusco's a fascinating topic because it was an absolutely giant of the 1970s early wine boom. Because it was easy to drink it was sweet and it was fizzy and it was kind of like cherry Coke for people who were just dipping their toes into the wine waters. And this is when things like Carlo Rossi Red and Royal Red and Baby Duck and oh god, what was the other one that came to mind early on? Métis Rosé. These were the giants of the wine industry at this point. And against those, like Riuniti Lambrusco kind of fit that mold. It was sweet, it was sparkling, it was easy. But today, when we're talking about Lambrusco on this table, you kind of need something that can run with today's palates and the way people look at wine today. I don't think anyone that I know would look at that and say, wow, what a great thing I just had, or even what a good thing I had, or what a passable thing I had, or let's ever drink that again, or let me clean my toilet with it. It's an artifact of its era. And I'm glad that Lambrusco is moving on. I really am, because the region deserves more respect, because this wine, in my glass, the real stuff, this rules. And I'm looking forward to hearing comments from people on these, because rankings on this one, how the heck do you rank such completely different things? I mean, obviously that would be dead last, but how do you rank these? And I'm curious to see how everybody feels about these, because yeah, there's a real disparity here. I don't know where I'm going to come down. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to put this last because I'm allergic to it. And is that unfair? Yes, but it's my ranking, so I'm going to rank it last because I can't drink it. I'm actually going to put the Clare Naudin first. I really like the Aligote. I'm going to put the Baldini second because I think it's charming and it goes with so many very hard to pair foods that are almost impossible to put wine with. This works very well. It keeps that cherry cola charminess of the cheaper Lambruscos, but doesn't add that hot tin foil and ketchup note. It's fun for things like Americanized Chinese food. It's fun for things that you wouldn't usually pair wine with. It's a nice everyday glass of wine. I'm putting the Foradori third, and it's a very tight top group for me because this is very pretty, but I just like the other two slightly more. No slam on the Lezèr. If this is your number one, by all means, that's great. But yeah, it's a tough ranking for me. I'll be curious to see other people's. Aaron, do you have a ranking? 'Cause you've been through all three now.
Yeah, I gotta think about it more.
Well, fair enough. You're on the white.
I like the champagne.
You like the champagne. You like the Limoux. All right.
I wasn't. I like the flat white.
Yep.
I preferred the rosé over it though.
Okay.
But I haven't had
The good one yet? No.
Wait.
Okay. All right. So we have some rankings coming in. Kevin has 2-1-4-3. Elizabeth has 2-3-4-1. That's a very different ranking. I like that. I'll notice for them 4 kind of falls towards the end for both of them. That's fair enough. So did good Lambrusco exist in the 70s? Yes, it would have. Because if it didn't, then wines like this wouldn't have survived. It never existed in North America. Lambrusco was very commercial. It's kind of like saying, did good Californian Merlot exist like in the heydays of Gallo in like the mid to late 80s when Gallo Merlot was the #1 wine in the world? Sure, there was good Californian Merlot out there. There had to be, or else there wouldn't be good Californian Merlot today for the most part. Unless you have like an absolute genius like Elizabetha Foradori who will like define a wine industry by raw force. Yes, but you'd never have seen it over here. It wouldn't have been exported. It would never have seen the light of day over here. Are we living in the best time for global wine? I think we are to a point coming to the end of a golden era for global wine. I've thought about this a lot, actually, and whether, running a wine shop that brings in wine from 30 different countries in a certain way makes me an eco-terrorist. I think that we're kind of living at the tail end of a time in the world where we can have wines from literally every continent in one store. I think that with carbon footprints and everything else, maybe not in the next 10 years, but certainly the next 20, Australian wines might become a very expensive treat, or wines from kind of harder to get to corners of Europe might become very expensive because of the cost of shipping them internationally. I think we are kind of coming to the end of a bit of a golden era, not of being able to get everything, but of an era of being able to afford everything, because shipping is only going to get more and more expensive. It's never going to get cheaper again. And this is a really cool wine now at $23-ish, $24. I could see in 10 years this being 30% more expensive, even adjusted for inflation, just because of shipping costs. I think the idea of cheap global shipping is kind of coming to an end. And I hope I'm wrong. I really do, because I love running a wine shop that has stuff from everywhere in the world. But I do kind of see I see a dawning horizon where that might not be the case. And we might kind of end up being in a European model where you go to France, the whole store is wine. Oh, do you have anything this is not from France? So like, oh yeah, it's like these 2 shelves. The whole rest of the store is just France. And I could see very much, maybe not in my lifetime, or maybe towards the end of my lifetime, where this store is like, what do you have for, Europe and Australia and South Africa? And it's like, oh, this. Everything else would be BC and the Pacific Northwest of the United States and maybe Northern California, because that's close. And I don't think that's the end of the world. I mean, Europe's lived on that wine model for a very long time, but it would certainly change the wine market here a great deal.
Synthahol.
Good old Synthahol. Yep.
That's where we're going.
But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. This is our last wine tasting before Christmas. It's our last wine tasting, actually our last tasting period of 2021. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm glad we all got to make fun of this Rioni di Lambrusco together. Have a wonderful Christmas, everyone. This was an absolutely wonderful year to hang out with you all. I've had a ton of fun. Aaron's had a ton of fun. Yeah. Mark's drank a lot of wine. We'll see all of you next year. Thank you so much and have a wonderful night.